Hello all, welcome to our first lecture in week one. This week we're going to be talking about the Elizabethan Poor Law in colonial America. This is kind of the root of our class. It talks about where our current practices come from, how do we deal with destitute people, criminals, orphan children, the mentally insane, where do some of our ideas for modern practices come from, how much of it is government agencies versus private agencies, and we're going to focus a lot on the history of that and if those are new practices or variations on old practices. We're going to talk about the roots of our belief system with the poor and the criminals. Some of our lectures and forum discussions in GHIS 205 will answer these questions. And you're going to see that as we go on. But this week is just very basic roots. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at Elizabethan Poor Law. The English Elizabethan Poor Law of 1601 was the foundation for the American colonial welfare system. Clearly, most of you will have already had basic American history and understand that while we do see a lot of settlers from different areas, really the colonies and the settlement part of America was mostly English. The French do have some outposts in Canada, other areas, but they will focus mostly on fur trading and other kinds of trading, and they won't actually have the same kind of colonial setup. Same with the Spanish. So with the exception of the Dutch in New York, some Huguenots from French, a few, the majority of the English settlers, or the majority, of early settlers from the American colonies in the 17th and early 18th century. They were born in Britain, and they're very proud of their British heritage. You know, early on, they really embrace their culture and their traditions that they bring over from the British. All of the colonists brought some religious and social traditions, including their views on how to deal with and respond to poverty. I'm just going to include slideshows while we do this. You can always check out these slideshows. I'll also upload them in the classroom so that you guys can get a closer look at some of the images and pieces that I'll put out here. English poor law, from the 16th and early 20th century was a response to population growth, rural migration, and industrialization that had changed the landscape of England. Now, as I've mentioned in this class, we assume that you have a background in American history. During this period, England will be going through the Industrial Revolution, which will really urbanize a lot of areas. With new urban areas, it becomes a lot of different working conditions, living conditions, and a lot more poor. The population's been shifting from very rural to growing urban society, and the economic demands of the growing industrial society result in this new mobility, and that produces vagabonds, sturdy beggars, and tramps, which have no home base. The law reflects the belief in building the strong, sufficient economy was critical to an economic advancement and social stability. So one of the ideas is they really believed they have to deal with what's going on with the poor in order to grow their economy. And there's a feeling that we need everyone to be working. So people could not be left just to wander around. They needed to be able to be productive, and the concern was that they might prey on citizens. Now, I'm sure that you're going to be able to make some great connections to how we see things today versus how we saw things then, and you're going to be able to see that really a lot of our ideas come from this moment. The law was intended to ensure that towns and cities assumed responsibility for assisting people in need. And they were not always just supposed to help them out, but like I said, make sure they're productive members of society. A unique feature of the law was the consideration of worthy versus unworthy poor. Worthy poor include orphans, widows, handicapped, the frail, and the elderly. There was an idea of Christian support for them because they're unable to care for themselves. Excuse me. So the difference would be, as I'm sure you can see, is that they're unable to provide for themselves. They might be unable to work, whereas the unworthy poor include drunks, shiftless vagabonds. The English clearly believed in the virtue of hard work, and they were concerned about people who would not work and contribute to the community. The consideration of who to help and how to help was often based on that perception. And though the terms will change, you're going to see a lot of the same theme as we go throughout the class. I've also included a link to the Social Welfare Project that you're supposed to read. You'll also find a lot of this stuff in the handouts and the reading sections of our class, just so you have an idea of where to look. Whereas England was dealing with a massive mobility, some of who were in demand only seasonally, the predominantly rural America colonies faced different challenges. So America, clearly because they have more land, they are more rural, they are going to face different challenges than England did. But we have to remember that the settlers who come over are dealing with a lot of these same perceptions, so they will be looking at how to implement these ideas into their new world. So the settled communities forced the death of its citizens constantly. Contagious diseases like smallpox, dysentery, and medicine decimated families. Women gave birth to an average 8 times in their life. Not all women survived. This was, clearly a different time medically. Wars with the Indians in early settlement days left survivors in desperate need of support. And life at sea could often mean the loss of life or limb. It was a brutal time settling and colonizing America. Children were at risk, so children often grew up without a mother. Injuries did not easily mend. So men could not always support their families, and resources could be quickly depleted, so that families often faced destitution in early colonial life. All of these catastrophes resulted in orphans, widows, frail elderly, and disabled people in need of assistance. So we're going to see how the colonies dealt with this idea of worthy poor. While they still lived in small groups, communities could often care for each other. Orphans were placed where they would serve as apprenticeships or indentured servants. Indentured servitude is a very important idea in the American colonies. The agreement to take an orphan in it could be driven by a desire to provide for the well-being of a future citizen, an opportunity to obtain additional resources through an indentured servitude contract. So they might just need help. One of the issues with the American colonies is there's an issue of overcrowding in England, but in the American colonies there's almost an issue of not enough people. There's a real demand for labor. So an indentured servitude was a way for someone to obtain labor in a hopefully cheaper fashion, was their goal. Able-bodied men and women who could not support themselves were expected to work in some capacity in the community. Usually indentured ship on a farm or in some other labor industry. Okay. At this time, people who were in need to receive assistantship without earning it, um, this approach is a reflection of the English Poor Law for striving for an orderly society. Communities did accept responsibility for meeting their neighbors' needs, and much of that response had religious overtones. So, when we talk about private institutions, we're talking about churches and generally religious charities. This response to the needy was driven by the religious belief that one's status in the world was a reflection of the endowed grace and that there were expectations to help the less fortunate. So, that God granted you your position and you were then expected to take care of others. They viewed their privilege and fortunate status as an opportunity to do good. Voluntary contributions gradually evolved over time to forms of local taxation. Because for some of the societies, like Puritans and some other colonial societies, they were very based on religion and religious ideas, which meant that they agreed and they had religious communities as well. The 13 colonies had different social, economic, political systems, so we're making some broad statements here. But at the same time, we can't make broad statements because the North and the South and different regions were actually very different. They shared a common approach to public assistance. Depending on the community church, wardens or the designated substantial householders. They served as overseers to collect the taxes, distribute the funds, and determine the public response to the people who needed it. They had the power to determine who received funds and who would be placed out. So really, in some ways, they were just the final arbitrators of who was the worthy and unworthy poor, who was going to get the assistance. As the population grew and became more complex, the needs of the people imposed a greater demand on the society. No longer could a local system of support suffice, and communities sought more permanent, regulated forms of relief. Some colonies require confirmation that servants would be supported by the family who they went to work with if they became ill or unable to work. So what they hoped was that able-bodied people who went to work for someone, if they became disabled or they became a part of the worthy poor where they weren't able to work, the family would take care of that need, take care of them into their elderly age, take care of all those needs, so that they wouldn't then go back to being a burden on the community. Another response to the emergence of cities and the growing number of impoverished people in the middle of the 18th century was the development of workhouses and almshouses. Early assistance was provided by people in their homes and was known as outdoor relief because people could get assistance outside of any kind of institution. So the relief was actually in the communities as opposed to gathering everyone into a relief house, which is what we'll see down the road. It took the form of food, fuel, possible money, but was never particularly generous. This was not meant to set people well off. This was meant really to prevent them from starving to death. As populations grew and people began to migrate from one community to another, institutions became the preferred option and were known as indoor relief because the assistance took place inside an establishment. Elderly citizens were more likely to receive assistance in their home, while younger able-bodied men and women were sent to workhouses or to indentured servitude. Because, as I mentioned, often those were farmhouses, but that was not the only way. Indentured servitude could also take place in industries. Especially in the north, we'll see the growth of shipmaking and other kinds of industries, and indentured servitude could actually be a good option because not only would they experience care at the moment, but for them it was also a possible career down the road. So this is the development of the Elizabethan Poor Law, and what's important is to understand that this is something that starts in England. It's an idea that starts in England, And what we're going to see as the British come over with a lot of their culture and politics and ideas is we're going to start with what is a very British system, and what really develops over there. And then we're going to take it to the colonies. And because the colonies are going to be a slightly different organization, as I said, even the North will be more rural than Britain. They'll have more of a demand for labor. Things will be slightly different. We'll see that as how things change within the American colonies. Every lecture, I'm going to provide references. These are references for where my information comes from. These are also references from where I get my little pictures and other things that I include in PowerPoint and my spoken lecture. So, feel free to check those out. They have a lot of great information about the topics we're talking about. They have a lot of great visual evidence, and hopefully it'll give you a chance to investigate our topics a little more every week. Thanks. You guys have a great week. Hello all, welcome to History 205, the history of American social welfare. I'm really excited to be teaching this course. It's just a little orientation to the class. Hopefully you guys have already watched the video. I did have my personal introduction so that you can get to know a little bit about me as we move for the class. This class is going to discuss what occurs in the United States welfare and correction today. But clearly in discussing today, we're going to look at the roots of the American system that we have. Like, for example, did you know where we got the word penitentiary? Can you explain the roots of our distinction of who deserves assistance and who does not? Do you know when military veterans began to receive assistance? And do you know the origins of professional social workers? We'll answer all those questions as we move throughout the class. And provide you with plenty of opportunities to relate to current events, to the past, and how we've developed our social welfare system in this country. There's no prerequisites for this class. I am going to move forward assuming that everyone's taken some basic American history. And basically what that's going to mean is in some places I'm going to go into a little more depth about some of the concepts of American history during our period, but most of our focus is going to be specifically on social welfare. So we'll talk about major events, but only as they really relate to social welfare. So if you guys need some more background, please let me know. I can recommend books or videos or anything like that. Emphasis will be on the movements and trends. I am not going to emphasize dates. I don't think that's the best way to learn history. I know for a lot of you, you're going to say, oh, but we have to know. And you do need to know a general idea of what came first, what came second, because the order of events affects how those events play out. But for me, I always tell my students a much more important word to understand when you're doing American history is why. Why do things happen? Why do people behave the way they behave? That I think you get a lot more out of than worrying about exactly what date it happened on. And through that, like I said, we're going to emphasize movements and trends, and we're going to talk about connections. I'm excited about making a contribution to the general education here at Union Institute and University. This is going to promote a depth of knowledge, but not only a depth of knowledge, but it's also hopefully going to be something that a lot of you can relate to. I know that a lot of you may be social work majors or criminal justice majors, and I feel like this class has been developed in a really great way to provide you with something that you can get passionate about in history. General education promotes breadth of education. It's a range of knowledge beyond your major. As I said, this class is developed so that hopefully it can give you something to get excited about. But more than just your major, you're going to be looking at and learning about some broader ideas, not just what's within your major. We're going to do a lot of writing, and we're going to do a lot of critical thinking. Like I said, my favorite part about American history and history in general is the why, the connections. So that kind of is going to help you see how these ideas connect to each other and give you some critical thought. Don't just regurgitate what you hear, but put your own thought into it. And of course, as I said, it introduces the breadth of content that, we are required to take classes outside of our major and to learn about other topics, because education is about more than just hopefully the job you're going to do in the future, but learning and having a more well-rounded breadth of knowledge. Your major gets you a job. General education ensures you a career, because you will never know, what this might bring to you. I think for an example for me is that, I took a lot of classes outside of history, and while I ended up teaching history, a lot of those skills continue to help me as I develop my classes and move beyond that. Let me give a little bit about the structure of our class. It's going to be a blend of lectures, videos, and readings. I'm going to be doing video lectures. As I said, hopefully you've already watched my personal introduction, which is designed to not only introduce myself, but give you a flavor for what our introductions will be. I plan on using a mix of my own face and PowerPoints. I'm going to record those and post those in the classroom. The recorded lectures with written videos and handouts. The first lecture is on the Elizabethan Poor Law. It's not quite a half an hour long, and most of our lectures will run from 10 to 30 minutes. The Elizabethan Poor Law does feel like it runs a little longer, with about an hour of lectures every week. In addition to that, I'll also post other videos, usually short ones, sometimes longer ones. PBS is one of my favorite resources, and we're going to be using some different videos from PBS, from the Films on Demand in our library. These documentaries will give you some topic introduction on different subject matters. Also YouTube clips, American Experiences, another, that's a PBS documentary. And then in addition to that, in addition to the videos, I'm going to include copies of my PowerPoints and the scripts that I use for these lectures, though that hopefully those of you who maybe need a little more visual will have that opportunity. I suggest printing either the PowerPoints or the script out so that you can have it while you watch the lecture, and then hopefully maybe take some notes as you go. Also, there's a readings. We do not have an overall textbook. With the variety of topics we're going to cover, sometimes that can be challenging to have one textbook. We do have a novel we're going to read, which I'm super excited about. I think you guys are going to be too. It's called Orphan Train. There are selected articles that you'll read as the weeks go by, and you'll always find those in the class, and 5 brief essays. In addition to this, we also have forum discussions. And forum discussions are probably my absolute favorite thing about teaching online. I'm hoping that you guys love them as much as I do. They give you a chance to really get your own opinion out there. For those of you who may find it hard to speak in class, forum discussions are a little more anonymous, and you can, write and think about what you want to say ahead of time. It gives you a chance to raise questions for other classmates, just things you've thought about. Raise questions for me so that I can talk about them. Include some of your own personal experiences and perspectives, because in our papers they're going to be a little more formal. Discussion board forums, they're expected to still be academic, but you can include a little more of yourself in there, and a little more of maybe you all have had some experience with these topics. I'm hoping you're going to challenge each other's thinkings, and of course be respectful. Net etiquette and things like that are really important ideas, and I'm going to post some things in the classroom about that. But it's in some ways it's just to be respectful of each other. Think about the fact that you can't see someone's body language or tone, or and sometimes people misread things. So make sure you read. I suggest everyone read their post twice. First to make sure you're getting your ideas across, and that spelling and grammar and all those kind of things are in place where they need to be. And then second, just to make sure that you're not saying something that can be construed the wrong way. We want to have positive, great discussions. We're going to do a research paper. I want you guys to choose a topic that interests you. So, it could be something related to your major. hopefully you're going to hear something in our lectures or our videos, or read something that's going to be a jumping off point that's going to get you really excited about one of these topics. Some of the topics are social work profession, child welfare, elderly care, corrections, social welfare economics, veterans benefits, social reform, and the role of government. Let me know if you want to do a variation, or if there's anything else that you want to look at beyond the list that I have currently. There are weekly 10-point quizzes. Listen to the lectures, read the articles, take the quiz. You can take the quiz as many times as you need to ensure 100%. And clearly, that will be up to you to take that on. But they're really meant to make sure you guys have an understanding of what the information is, rather than, like I said, to provide some kind of memorization. I just want to see where you guys are, and it gives you a chance to boost your grade. You open the quiz, you answer the questions, you back out, you look up the questions you might have missed, you return to answer. You only have an hour, so you kind of want to make sure you set aside some time to do it. And then you hit submit when you're all done. Some of the key points that I'm going to go over, I'm going to repeat in the Prezi Screen presentations. Prezi Screen is pretty easy to use. If you guys have trouble with it, let me know. I know that sometimes blocked content, you guys can't see it. There is a handout in our classroom that tells you how to open up that blocked content in case you're... So I have checked, and all of the links and videos are working, and if you come across a blank space, be sure you check that blocked content first. And remember, like I said in my personal introduction, we have amazing tech support here at Union. Please, please, please be sure you call them if you're struggling and something in the classroom won't work. We all are going to face some technical issues the first few weeks, just making sure we are where we need to be. Then there's the research paper, which is 2,000 words, which is about 8 pages. That's due during the 6th week. Then we're going to read and comment on each other's papers. In week 8, you will have an opportunity to revise and submit. If you're happy with your grade, there's no reason to revise and submit if that's not what you're interested in. There is not going to be any penalty, because I do expect real revisions if you decide to do that revision. So don't just change a couple words. Really think about the comments you get from me, from fellow students. The orphan train papers due in the 8th week. Please be sure to note it has a midweek deadline, and that's extremely important, because then for the rest of the week we're going to discuss your orphan train papers, and we can't discuss it if you're not prepared. There will be some opportunities for extra credit. You can post an article to current events that links to what's going on in our class. So please be sure that if you see an article that you're passionate about and you think really applies to social work, poor law, any of the subjects that we're going to be discussing over the next 8 weeks, you post it and you write something about not only the article, maybe a few sentences that summarize the article, but tell us how it connects to our class. Why is it important? Why does it connect to the history that we're studying? I don't usually do traditional office hours because I'm not in the office. I am at my home. But I am willing to do things like Skype chat. I know some people like to see my face and they just feel better about meeting in a little more personal setting. I'm always available to talk over the phone. Sometimes if I'm with my kids or unavailable, you might go to voicemail, but I will give you a call back, usually within a couple hours. And then email. I love email. I generally leave my email up all day, and I usually always respond within 24 hours, and I try to respond within a few hours. However, if you guys are hitting me up at 10 o'clock at night, I might already be in bed and I might not see it. So, I am an online teacher. My goal is to actively engage all week, but I am definitely also active on the weekends. So don't feel like you can't reach out to me, because I know there's a good chance that's when you're doing your own work. Please let the IT help desk, as I've already said, know if you have any problems with accessing any area of the class. Do not hesitate to contact me if you have questions about the class. I will do my best to walk you through anything, whether it's technological or just the requirements of what I'm expecting. I hope that you guys find this class interesting. I hope that you're excited about it. I hope that you take away from it a historical foundation, not only for your majors, as I said, but for what you read in society every day. You know, one of the things I think comes out of an American history class is better citizens. We can better make decisions about what we're going to do with the future of our country if we understand where we've come from. So I hope that's what you guys get out of this. Thanks.